Hello, good afternoon, good evening if you're in APAC, and good morning if you're dialing in from the US. Welcome to Women in Hospitality Travel Tech presenting Diversity and Inclusion Talks, episode 3. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Devi Virdi. I'm Head of Diversity and Inclusion here at WHTT. Bit about myself. So most recently, I was leading the commercial and the operational function in Northern Europe for HRS. Prior to that, I was leading a global sales team for an international hospitality provider. I've been in a global travel management company, and my background is in HR. So been in the travel ecosystem for now, 20 years. So that's about to tell my age. Anyhow, I'm incredibly excited to be here today. And today is episode 3. And the conversation is about compassionate leadership in uncertain times. So our panelists will be in conversation for around 40 minutes, and I will involve questions from you, our audience, during the talks. So please do ask questions during the session. So in times of uncertainty, which we are in right now, the role of organizational leaders is critical. And today's conversation will explore the principle and the practical applications of compassionate leadership in inclusive leadership. Right, so without further ado, I'd like to welcome and introduce the superb panelists that we have today. So Liz Emmott is currently the General Manager at UK for Amadeus. Now, Liz joined Amadeus in 2016 as a Sales Director and was appointed General Manager in 2018. She's based at the company's Gatwick offices. She's responsible for enabling travel companies across the business and leisure sectors to succeed by deploying technology that drives opportunity and productivity and revenues for the UK travel agencies. Now, in addition, she leads the technology's company's commercial activity in the UK, Ireland, and Italy for business travel accounts. Prior to joining Amadeus, Liz held senior positions at American Express across the payment, financial services, and the corporate business travel sectors. Liz is a wife, mom, and passionate about supporting young people and sits on the board of trustees for Action West London, who commit to delivering a better future. Welcome, Liz. We're so delighted to have you here with us today.
Thank you.
We then have Diane. So Diane most recently was leading Airplus International in the Americas. She has just finished an extensive 20+ year professional chapter at Airplus, where she started pretty much as a one-man band woman as a sales exec, opening up the Italian market. Rising through the ranks from 2008 to 2017, she covered the position of the Italian MD for Airplus International. And in 2017, she moved to the US, where she was not only head of Americas, but she also had the US CEO hat for Airplus International. Diane has over 30 years of experience in the travel sector, travel payment, and travel technology. And she's previously worked for sectors such as American Express and Travelport. She has served as the ACT country champion for Italy for over 10 years, and also on NGOs in Italy, India, US, and Uganda. She's now passionate about putting her experience towards one of her many passions and practices to increase happiness and well-being at home or in the workplace, diversity and inclusion, leadership, as well as orphan and foster care children. Diane is a mom, a wife, and she's a mom to 4, of which 3 children are adopted. And she's excited to pivot once again. Diane, welcome. We're so delighted to have you with us today.
Yay! Thank you.
And last but not least, Eugenio. So Eugenio is the Chief People and Culture Officer and Global Diversity Champion for the Dorchester Collection. So Eugenio has dedicated his 30+ career to ensuring that people are the cornerstone of every business decision. An ardent advocate for diversity and inclusion across all aspects of operation. Eugenio has pioneered several pivotal initiatives for the Dorchester Collection, in fact, including the We Care philosophy. Now, as the company's global diversity champion, he works closely with Stonewall and other organizations to ensure that he maintains a workplace that's truly inclusive. Now, Eugenio joined the Dorchester Collection in 2011 as VP for People and Organizational Development. And in 2017, he was appointed Chief People and Cultural Officer. Prior to the Dorchester Collection, he was a regional HR director for the Fairmont Hotels Group. He's been recognized on the HR Most Influential Practitioner list by HR Magazine for the past 5 consecutive years. That's amazing. Well done. What an accolade. And he's also the author of a successful book, Be a People Leader, a Sustainable Framework for Achieving Your Full Leadership Potential, in which he shares his strategy for successful people management in the workplace. Wow, what incredible bios you all have. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
I am incredibly honored to have you all here today, and really looking forward to the conversation, with yourself. So I think just a couple of headlines and to kick off the session today, we are really living in, what I'd say is such interesting times, right? And actually, in terms of where we are with COVID-19, and what that presents to us all. Because the reality is each of us are experiencing this very differently. There's an analogy that I've heard, and you most probably have all heard it, but whilst we're all in the same storm, we're all in very different boats, right? And that resonates very much with me. In May this year, the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, he wrote a piece in a paper in the New York Times, and it's an article, and he talks about, the future of work and what it means, from a long-term perspective, but also what does it mean from a leadership perspective. And I think, there's a lot to talk about of leadership, right? And why it's important, particularly in these times, and the whole principle of compassionate leadership. And I think for me, those sort of principles of having, really high levels of EQ, so emotional intelligence, high empathy, right, is incredibly important right now. And so I guess to kick off as a first question, and Liz, I'm going to start with you, but, do you think having compassion and being an inclusive leader, do you think it's more critical today than previously because of the times that we're currently living in?
I think that it's critical anyway. It's always been critical. But in terms of what we're living through at the moment, I think the ability to show compassionate leadership is something that is particularly important right now. It was quite funny when I was thinking about this session and sort of answering this question. I thought to myself, well, I'm just assuming here that I'm compassionate. So I thought, my God, well, let me just send a note to my team and see if, I actually have been compassionate over the past few months. What have I done? It's all very well me saying, yes, I'm a very compassionate person. But what I chose to do is just send out a note to those guys to sort of get an idea of were there things that I did during that period that helped the team. And, there were a couple of areas particularly, and, I've got quite a wide remit. I've got my own direct reports. I have an extended team. And then also I manage the entire UK market as well. So it was what I tried to think about is ways that I could engage individuals, recognizing that everybody has different needs. And, I think that the most popular thing that I did was set up something from right at the beginning of lockdown called Gin O'Clock, which I used to do every day with my team, 30 minutes. There were 20 of us on the call. There was no agenda. You could talk about work, homeschooling, what you had for breakfast, you know, anything that was on your mind. You don't have to speak. You can speak if you want to. So, you know, that was one thing that really helped to bring the team together. And I think my final point is that, interestingly, over the last 6 months, I would say that my team and I have probably bonded a lot more than we did in the previous 12 months, just because of what we've been through together.
That's really interesting you say that, right, Liz, because it's also down to these sort of the initiative that you made to bring the team together, right? To gel them together because of the sort of unprecedented times that we're going through. You know, Diane, from your perspective, what are your thoughts, you know, when it comes to compassionate leadership, particularly now in these current environments? And you know, you've only just finished with Airplus. So how has your journey been, you know, I'd say from March onwards and up until you pretty much finished? How was that impact?
Well, it was pretty, it was brutal. I mean, you know, the realization of what was going on, it took some time really to realize what was actually happening to everybody. I mean, the scope of it is just so huge. It was really almost hard to grasp. And so it was important to move quickly. We had to obviously also take very difficult decisions, and, you know, because we had to absolutely look at costs. We had to reduce the headcount in some cases, hours, change the way we worked. So because compassion is important at all times, like Liz said, I mean, all this had to be done in the way I saw it, absolutely with more compassion than ever. So this is what I brought. I mean, I really tried to support the people that were impacted. And in the going, besides, let's say, the day-to-day, you know, it was really important to understand that people were going through such hardships. They needed these moments at the cooler, like this, you know, Zoom cooler, sort of, so to speak. And they needed to know that, of course, we expected everybody to be working, but at the same time, you know, you could work, but at the same time, people were not traveling. So the most important aspect was give priority to the well-being of each individual and really deep dive into how everybody was doing. And at the same time, also the well-being of our customers. So making sure that with, let's say, the rearrangements of our schedules and everything, we were not going to impact the customers. We wanted to be there. So that's pretty much, you know, it's how you show up at the end. People, I mean, they feel how you show up.
That's a really, really great saying, you know, to feel how you show up, right? As an organization, as a leader, right? Leading a region as well, where you were, you know. Eugenio, tell us all, you know, from your perspective, you know, in your role where you are with the Dorchester Collection, obviously, you know, from a group or even a standalone hotel, how has that journey been for you as a business, for you in your role?
Yeah, thank you very much. What was really unique when we talk about compassion, I mean, we were in a situation where, you know, unfortunately, like many hospitality businesses, we suffered greatly. Travel, tourism, all of those types of things. We had to close 70% of our hotels. People started working from home. We made a quick decision and decided we wouldn't make anyone redundant. We were lucky that we were in a position to be able to do that. But that was just one part of the equation. Although we gave people that stability to be able to continue to support their families and their lives, you know, when we made a commitment right at the beginning that we wanted to make sure that we talked to every single one of our employees on a weekly basis. But through that process, you're being invited into their homes through these video calls, which is quite amazing. But then you you know, what people didn't realize is when you invite them to the homes, you get to see this other side of how people live, how they interact, the families that they live within. Some people live in beautiful homes, other people are sharing a room with 8 other people. I mean, it was quite a remarkable, eye-opening situation, and we had spent a lot of time training and educating our leaders on how to handle these conversations and how to think about people's mental health. But we quickly had to really go down the line of compassion and really put ourselves in their shoes and understanding what it meant for somebody to be in lockdown and what it meant to have to live in a situation where people were lonely or people were not used to spending all of that time with their loved ones, or, you know, having to homeschool, you know, many situations. And you know, compassion really became the key behavior, if you will, and the key outcome of each of our 5 values, which we really teach our people to live. But the behaviors had to continue to alter and be a lot more compassionate to really understand what the people were going through. You know, getting them through the lockdown was one thing, but then of course, as you come out of lockdown, and we very fortunately now reopened all of our hotels, what happens next? How do you then handle the fear factor of getting back on a tube and getting back into the work and dealing with the guests showing up and the emotional situations that both the employees and the returning customers or guests are going to be feeling? So I think compassion is prevalent through every single aspect from the beginning to the end. And I would quote probably something that Liz said at the beginning, it's always been there though. You know, I've been 30 years in the business, and compassion is a word that's been used forever because it is really part of the DNA of a successful culture.
Yeah, and actually, you've also hit the nail on the head there, right, Eugenio? It should be. It should be part of the DNA of the culture of the organization, because an organization where, from a leadership point of view, that where you are showing your teams, your people, that you care, that you understand what they're going through, and that analogy of, you know, put yourself in their shoes. You're absolutely right. Is that you know, you can't relate to everybody, but you can understand, and you take a humble and a sympathetic approach when you see that there are individuals who are, you know, sharing their houses, right? And they are perhaps sat on the end of a bed to do a call, which is very different to somebody who perhaps lives in a terrace property. It is absolutely different, isn't it? And I think, you know, you're right. I think you've all said it so beautifully well. You know, I mean, for me, I think compassionate leadership, it is absolutely more important now more than ever. You know, I think in my own time and experience, you know, I've had great leaders and not so great leaders, you know, and that's the reality of the business and the situation. But I think it's absolutely, and it's fundamentally key for leaders, particularly in the sector, because we are going through unprecedented times, you know, that haven't happened in hospitality, in travel tech, in aviation, you know, that the whole travel ecosystem sphere, that, you know, that leaders are really sort of demonstrating, you know, their compassion and their inclusivity more than anything. And, you know, I think we talked about this before, but why now, right? And this expression is so overused, because the reality is we've never been in this situation. You know, and more to the point, you as leaders have never been in this situation, right? So it's completely new territory for you, and it's completely new territory for other leaders. And actually everybody's learning, you know, everybody is learning how to manage and how to lead teams. And I think, you know, the role of a leader right now is, you know, and you've all said it, it's about the people. You know, Liz, you said it shouldn't just be now, it should always be there, right? Being compassionate. But it's also about creating that culture of kindness, right? It's about, and I really like that, because I think there's a real human connection of an element that comes through on that. And it's about, you know, we do need to be kind to ourselves, you know, in this point in time, when, you know, Eugenio, you said it, there's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of huge amount of vulnerability and uncertainty amongst individuals, amongst teams. And we also need to be kind to ourselves. And that whole mental health, the well-being element of that self-care piece that comes back to it, and to being kind, you know, kind to others as well. So, you know, Diane, how do you grapple? And I guess, you know, looking at from not necessarily from an Airplus point of view, but, you know, if you look at basically the sector that it is today, and perhaps how other sectors have worked, you know, from a sort of inclusivity, compassionate leadership point of view. What sort of, you know, what advice would you be giving to leaders, you know, to really be able to support their teams and the organizations in their roles? You know, if you had to give a colleague or a peer, what perhaps you've done that you sort of could share?
So I just would like to add something to what you said also.
Yeah.
I think COVID-19, with all the difficulties and the ugliness and the, you know, trauma, etc., it also is also bringing something good, because we entered into COVID, and let's say the professional life that I've experienced is one where really being kind and being vulnerable, especially if you're a woman, being kind and being vulnerable is considered like, well, maybe you're just weak. And it is so we entered, I think, into COVID, you know, with this persona that we have to show up at the office with, where we gotta be tough, and yeah, you know, we sort of like work together with people, but we don't care about the human element, you know, like where it's like you're being weak if you consider the human element. So I love the fact, I mean, sadly, it was just sort of like, you know, like this quick swoop, and we had to like all of a sudden realize, oh, the human element is so important and we cannot do without it. So I just think, you know, it is, I think with the help of COVID, compassion is here to stay. So I think we're going to exit COVID with this not being considered a weakness anymore, which to me is so important, because, you know, that's how you foster dialogue.
Totally.
Trustworthiness, openness, that you can embrace differences, not be afraid of, you know, people that are different from me or that don't have my problems and things like this. So I just wanted to add that. And I just wanted to say that, you know, compassion at the end of the day means being considerate, tuning into another person. And it also kind of means, you know, feeling the pain. Well, let's not go that far, but it means walking the moccasins. So with that idea, you come, you know, to the conversation already know that you're going to consider the person element of who is talking to you. And I think it's really, really critical now to leverage this diverse thinking. So this is the suggestion, you know, and absolutely the action that I would ask everybody to take. It's to leverage the diverse thinking. This doesn't mean diverse thinking, you know, the color or woman, man. It means, you know, any people in different areas of the company. It means just talking function to function, creating groups to be able to really let everybody know that the leader is not somebody that knows it all by any means.
Yeah.
There is openness. You can be very vulnerable, saying that you don't know something. It's okay. You know, it's how it's also how we need to show up in today's world, which is authentic.
And that's a great word, right? But because it's, you know, compassionate leadership is authentic leadership. It really, in my books, it definitely is. But, you know, what authentic means to one person will vary to what it means to someone else, right? Everybody will have a different sort of opinion on that spectrum, but it's very much akin. And I think, what's really interesting, and Liz, perhaps you can share, but you mentioned something earlier on, Liz, right, that you did a survey, so when you talk about, compassion and inclusion, it's really funny because very recently, I've spoken to a number of leaders and they all said, oh, yes, I'm inclusive. Oh, yeah, I'm quite compassionate. But it goes back to the point, actually, the individuals themselves aren't best placed to be the judge, right, as to whether they are compassionate or inclusive. It is the people around them, right? So the people around them, it's those that you have an impact on, that, and actually others that are front and center that can actually share with you in terms of how inclusive and how compassionate you are as a leader, leading a territory, a market. So I think that's really fantastic, Liz, to see that, you did that, you actioned on it, and you went out to your team to sort of get their viewpoint. And also, perhaps where it wasn't so great, you also know that you can then improve on, right? And that's feedback. And I think it's really important that leaders want to get that feedback, and want to then engage on it and do something about it. What's your take on that, Liz?
Yeah, I mean, I was a bit worried doing it, actually. I kind of reworded the email about 4 times. And then I thought, oh, God, what if nobody replies? Or what if everyone comes back and says, no, you were awful? But no, I mean, the feedback was, I constantly solicit feedback. But there were some quite surprising things that came back. People liked the sessions that I did, and I ran different sessions for different people. So obviously the whole company doesn't want to speak to me every day, nor necessarily do my own team, but we all chit chat, and that was quite durable. So I had sort of different, the feedback that I got was mainly around the sessions, making myself available, but not trying to necessarily force an agenda. So saying, hey, just turn up, if you don't want to talk, you don't have to, it's absolutely fine. And one of the funny things that happened actually was I do what we call the Gatwick Gathering, which apparently gives a real sense of family, which was some of the feedback that I got. But one of the first in COVID, I'd given my little boy a haircut because all the hairdressers were shut, and I'd accidentally cut him a big hole down the side of his head. And so while I was doing my introduction during the gathering, and I said, I probably won't be repurposing as a hairdresser throughout all this. At which point my 8-year-old came charging onto camera, rips off his baseball cap and goes, yeah, look at what she did. And the sort of feedback that I got from that afterwards, all the times when I tried to say, my introduction, very thoughtful and corporate and, comments to make me look good. Everybody appreciated a lot more when my 8-year-old showed up and made me look pretty stupid. So, I think I tend to have a lot of fun when I'm working anyway. I really buy into this whole being authentic. I've had feedback over my career. When you make fun all the time, people don't think you're serious about what you do. And I chose to ignore them, actually, and I chose to keep that sense of fun. And I think people really appreciate it. And that's who I am. And my team, the feedback that I get from my team is that I make them feel relaxed. I'm who I am. And, that is a good environment for them. So that was good.
And Eugenio, what's your take on, authentic leadership combined with bringing that compassion piece together?
Yeah, I want to just quickly talk about the kindness piece as well.
Sure.
To me, it speaks to the authentic piece.
I love it. I love that you're singing all about kindness.
Well, it really resonates because we have we have our vision, of course, and our values, and we have our mission, which is something that we don't generally share with the external public. But one of the statements in our mission statement is kindness over process, because I think one thing that this COVID world has brought into the forefront, unfortunately, is that understandably, because it's been so dramatic and it's so heavily impacted so many industries, but, I think obviously in particular hospitality tourism, because of the travel and all of that, we, a lot of companies really focused on COVID-19 and trying to, reassure people and doing all of those types of things. And, you saw companies talk about cleanliness, and this became their big message. And when we reopened our hotels, people came back and, there was already an assumption we were going to be clean. They really wanted to see the kindness, and they really wanted to not be overwhelmed by people in security telling them, don't touch this, go wash your hands. They wanted to know that we were warm and welcoming them again, and that they were coming into this beautiful environment, and the relationships that we faced and that we created with them, over so many years, that was still there. And that's what really elated and made them happy again, and really put to bay a lot of their fears. And I think this is one of the things where, you should never be led by process and procedures. Yes, some things are there for legal reasons, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's about kindness and relationships. And that really does speak to the authenticity, not only of people, but of your brand and who you are and what you're trying to represent to the world, which is ever changing. And I think you always have to remember about keeping employees and guests and customers at the center of what you're doing and what you're trying to be, through that purpose or whatever the case may be. But that, at the end of the day, people will never remember sometimes the name on the door, but they will remember, the people that they interacted with. We have people that have worked with us for years, and we have people that come back to us simply because of these authentic people. And, they invite them to their homes, and tell them when they have children, all of those amazing things. And I think this is what's really important with authentic leadership and, compassion again, and kindness and building relationships. That's all part of that. But, being authentic and really being genuine is something that is really going to set you apart, and ensure that you have continual loyalty, even during times of crisis.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. I love that, that part of the Dorchester Collection, your mission statement, you've got that piece, kindness over process, right? Because we do live in such a transactional world, don't we?
Yes.
We look at our own businesses. I mean, from where I was, even from a travel tech point of view, from a hospitality point of view, you just think about it. We live in such a transactional world that COVID, you're absolutely right. It's been all about, which are the clean hotels? Let's have a look at the list of the clean hotels, right? It's all about our travelers confident to, travel, our companies happy for their travelers to travel. But ultimately, people are people. We're all humans. We're one race. And I think this is really important to remember as a leader, you need to, when you think about compassion and inclusion, it is really important, because the two do go hand in hand. I'm a big believer that the sort of compassionate leadership, inclusive leadership piece, it leads to higher engagement, right? It leads to higher belonging, from a team. There's the whole psychological safety element, right, from a team that you have. And ultimately, this leads to just stronger productivity, whether it's impacting your bottom line or not, or the team's performance. But all those elements, including that well-being piece, are so fundamentally important. So we have a question. So the question's from, now I'm going to apologize if I say your name wrong. It's from Avalon. And the question to the panel is, as leaders, do you get support or enough support, even before the pandemic, to lead with compassion and kindness? Sometimes the problem seems to be that although the leaders are showing care, kindness on a daily basis, if leadership further up the food chain or the culture of the organization doesn't support it, what then? Is this just an ongoing cycle? Eugenio, what are your thoughts on that from your point of view?
I mean, it's a great question. I mean, there's that old saying where, the what is it, the fish stinks from the head, or whatever the case may be. I mean, definitely there has to be, but there has to be definitely a top-down approach in any organization, from the perspective of, the way things get set. It's one thing to have a vision, it's one thing to have a purpose, but, this needs to be displayed, by every level of the organization. And certainly people follow leaders for a reason. And so I do think it is important, and I think it could be a dangerous cycle. Within Dorchester Collection, many years ago, we created, at the very top of our structure, let's say, the idea of inspirational leadership. And we do quite a bit of training around this. We do, week-long programs. We fly everyone in for it. It's really important to us based on our values. And it's very much about our role is to actually create an environment where people can be successful. It's not to micromanage them. And even, many companies have, hundreds of policies and procedures. We don't have that at all. We have what's known as the Care for the Collection. And it's basically a guide of how we want our hotels run and how we want the experiences of our employees and guests to be felt. And then we give those guidelines to the hotels and we say, now you guys make it happen, but keep in mind these guidelines. I've been with the company 9 years. 9 years on, I have 12 policies, and that's it. I do believe that you have to recruit the right people and let them shine. The whole idea is that, people recruit people and put them on an organizational chart, and then they spend the whole career trying to get them outside the box. Well, why put them in the box to begin with? The idea is that, you're hiring people because they're going to add brilliance to your culture. That's where certainly diversity, inclusion comes in.
Sure.
We're lucky, we're gender balanced as an organization in every level of our organization. We have LGBT representation in all levels of our organization. And this is what makes your company unique. The fact that you're willing to be different. And I think it definitely has to start from the top. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I wholeheartedly support that. And I would definitely say, from my experience of knowing, where we are in the travel sector, we've got a long way to go from that. I think it's fantastic to hear that, organizations like the Dorchester Collection are, really sort of ahead of that. You're ahead of the curve. If you look at it from a linear curve point of view, I think it is definitely, empowerment. I can hear Wendy Potter writing it in there, empowerment all the way. And that is so true. You have to empower your teams. You have to empower your leaders, to allow them. And because micromanagement doesn't work, right? Yeah. So there's a question that we've got from Svetlana. Diane, I'm going to put this one towards you. So as we enter into the era of technology, what do you think about how tech should be leveraged so that we can still keep our humanity, at the same time not stop the development of business?
Well, we've seen how much technology has helped us right now, and actually, how much more technology we would have loved to have during, especially the first few months of COVID. So technology is absolutely the backbone. Also, consider schooling. I mean, if we didn't have technology, and actually, I'm so scared that we're going to have a COVID generation kids anyway. So I think technology has been really a savior. I think technology is changing the way we learn. So also the way we will be teaching across companies, because in any case, we have to learn so much. It is really not even, it's just too expensive, and it's just not efficient to do in person all the time. So by using and leveraging on technology, we can really, probably widen the scope of the all the different aspects that we have to teach our teams, our managers. And also, just look at invisible pay, look at payments being, more efficient all the time. I don't see you anymore, but anyway, I think it's okay. Okay.
No, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Yeah. And so I think especially payments cash is pretty much going not so strong. In France, the ATM machines are far and few between. I think this is a good thing. So yeah, technology, we will find more and more ways to use it. It's good, but absolutely, the human aspect and the meetings in person, we will have to keep those as well as soon as we, can. And
sure.
yeah.
And perfect. And Liz, would you like to add on to that as well?
Yeah, surely. From a technology perspective, so Amadeus has just published a paper, actually, which is available on our website. Quick plug there. But it's called From Human Touch to Human Tech. And what it's looking at is what is the right balance between where we need to continue to have human interaction and where we use technology in order to enhance the customer experience. Mm-hmm. So, I guess it's finding that blend, and the paper actually talks in quite a lot of detail about where we think that balance is. And what both travellers and travel agencies should consider when trying to blend the two.
Fantastic, Liz. Thanks so much. Eugenio, did you want to add anything onto that?
Yeah, I mean, I love the conversation about technology, and and we love technology for sure in Dorchester Collection. We certainly spent enough time and money on it over the years, as many companies. I think you just have to be really careful with technology because, as somebody wrote in one of the comments as well, it is very important that technology is great because it's an enabler to allow better human interaction. And I think this is really, really important to always have that balance out there. We used to speak a lot about innovation in our company, and a lot of times when you think of innovation, people think technology. And so we clearly defined that for us, innovation was anything that gave more time to the employee to engage with the guest. So, and because it's really important that you put sort of a little bit of a lock around it, because you can run the fear where it's a replacement, and that's, I don't think, should be the point. Certainly not in hospitality, in tourism, because it really is about that relationship building. So I just wanted to make that point, at least from our perspective.
Sure, no, and completely understand. Put yourself in your shoes, understand exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah.
So, as a close, and actually it's a question from Leslie. So Leslie has asked, what is the one thing leaders can do to demonstrate compassion? Diane, I'm going to start with you first. So, perhaps you could share with us, what is the one thing perhaps you've done in your role when you were at Airplus? What is the one thing that you did demonstrate, or you could demonstrate, in terms of a leadership point of view on compassion?
So I think the most important aspect is demonstrating that you're committed to it. So demonstrating commitment. And demonstrating commitment also means that, you want to look into aspects behind the words. So you want to be aware of the biases that there are, both your own and from a company perspective. And I think also it answers a little bit the question from before that, of course it's top down, but at the same time, we also we are all middle managers or managers of ourselves or of a team or whatever. And I just think we need to embody that. We need to embrace it. This is COVID time right now. And I'm sorry if I have a boss that, doesn't believe it. Okay, obviously, but this is not something that will be, disruptive negatively. I don't think at this point anymore. So ask open questions to the team. Include it in your weekly meetings, the topic, and just make it a regular discussion point.
Fantastic.
And little by little work on it, and then you create the programs. And the programs that to me are so important of developing, at the end of the day, well-being and happiness in the workplace.
That it's a real magic, isn't it? You know, there's certain elements of combinations, criteria that actually an individual needs. Liz, what are your thoughts on that question? You know, what is the one thing leaders can do to demonstrate compassion?
I would say communication, but I caveat that with authentic communication, and also the ability to understand that you have to adapt the way that you communicate depending on who it is you communicate with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. And Eugenio, you tell us.
Yeah, I think if I could say one thing, I would say couple compassion with purpose. Because I think compassion is a huge word and has a huge meaning, and it can come out in so many ways. It can be really exciting, it can be really sad, it can be happy. You know, it can come out emotionally in so many ways. You know, when you think about what your company is and what the purpose is you're trying to do with your employee experience, your guest experience, your customer interactions, in building relationships, make sure your compassion aligns to that. Because otherwise it could tend to maybe overspill, although I don't think you can ever be too compassionate. I think having purpose in the direction you're going in is really important to ensure that the compassion goes alongside of it.
Wow, it's what a topic, right? I mean, I sort of think as a close, you know, some of the sort of, you know, what we've shared in the past 45 minutes, we've talked about, you know, really we've touched on authentic communication, right? You know, Liz, this is what you've just mentioned. You mentioned about, you know, that actually compassion is about, it's at all times. It's, yes, it's important now, but you know, you need as a leader to make sure that you are, you know, showing that authentic compassionate all the time. You know, Diane, you talked about, you know, giving that priority to the well-being of the employees and to the customers. I think that's fantastic. And it's about showing up. And that's incredible because that comes back down to authentic leadership, right? In my books, it definitely does. And, you know, Eugenio, for me, from the Dorchester one, kindness over process, you have that in your mission statement. You know, you are walking the talk. You guys are doing it. I salute you because it's there. It's part of your branding. And that's fundamentally what it means to be part of an organization's DNA, right? It's about that commitment. And, you know, I would definitely say, listen, we are in a different world. People are definitely looking for, you know, a different kind of leadership. I think, you know, we want leaders who are reaching out to different kinds of people, right? For different solutions, because the solutions we need in the future, tomorrow, they aren't what we needed in the past. And in this disruptive, evolving world, right, it absolutely demands a very different kind of leadership, because I don't think any one person has the answer, any one leader has the answer, you know, of what's going to happen in the future. So it goes back to sort of, you know, tying the knot and, you know, sharing that what you've all said, compassionate leadership, it's inclusive leadership. It brings about higher engagement across your teams. As a leader, if you can deliver that, you bring about higher sense of belonging to your employees, you know, right the way through. It has that whole well-being, psychological safety element in, and then there's an impact, right, to that bottom line somewhere, that productivity piece. So with that, my goodness, I'm speechless. I would really like to thank the audience for tuning in. It's been 50 minutes. This is the longest session that we've had. A huge thank you. You know, it's October the 1st. This is also Global Diversity Month. So, you know, I am hoping that organizations in our sector are doing something to support that. It's also Black History Month, guys. So I hope that there's some accolades, some support across the travel tech sector, you know, to show that we're supporting, you know, within this piece. And the reality is, it's great we're celebrating them in the months, but it shouldn't just be about 1 month, right? We all know this. So a big, big thank you to my panelists. I'm incredibly honored to have 3 of you here today. It's been phenomenal. This episode is available on YouTube. It'll be on Facebook. It's going to be on Instagram, and you've got it on LinkedIn. And the next Diversity and Inclusion talk takes place next Thursday, which is a week from today. It's episode 4. It's Black History Month in the UK, and that's the topic. And I'm going to be learning because, again, it's a subject that I'm not knowledgeable about. So please tune in, and I cannot wait to welcome you all then. Thank you all so much, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.